Hello, everybody. So, yeah, yesterday, this is going to be another one of those videos that I just kind of create just so that I have available to myself in the future at future jobs on YouTube. Uh, Basically, it's kind of like yesterday's video. Basically, like most places I work, I can't get to my own resources to as references. Um, and so I either have to relearn it or whatever. But I've never worked at a place where YouTube was blocked. So that's what this video is for. But basically, I just wanted a very bare bones example of a dialogue launching a dialogue box, and this is that. And but in the context of this project, what I wanted was like I realized that it was going to be very difficult for me to remember the difference between a normal, basic, and a falling material in the future. I just don't think normal, basic, and falling in my brain um, in any way conveys what they do. So I wanted to make an additional, like I thought that was just too much for a hint test. So hint text. So a normal basically is a material that can be rendered without light and does not support colors. A basic, this is a material that can be rendered without light and does support colors. And Fong, this is a material that can be rendered without light, without light, but with a black color when there's no lighting. When light is provided, it supports colors and shadows. Basically, I feel like that sums it up. When I did searches on these things, I could not. Let me hit reset. I tried to do this video before. Um, I could not find any good explanations that were just this sort of simplistic. Most of the explanations were talking about matrices and applications and things like that that just honestly weren't conveying to me in English what they did from a practical perspective. So that's that. But anyways, so this is a good example of creating a dialogue that pops up. So what happens is when you click on this, the dialogue pops up. When you click off of it, the dialogue closes down. If you click on it and click your escape button, it closes and returns the focus to there. Anyways, the first step in doing this would be to create a new component. So I created a new component. The command is ng, which stands for generate, c, which stands for component, and then put it in the toolbox folder, in the mesh manager folder, and materials. So if you look in the toolbox and mesh manager, there's a whole new component called materials. And I probably should have called it materials info or something like that, but this is probably fine. And then, yeah, so I'm just going to start inside the material. Well, let me go over here. Yeah, so let's go to the mesh manager and see what we did in the HTML. So basically, I sort of modified the hint text a little bit. I didn't change any of the text itself, but I made it so it was formatted a little better, and I created a matte icon. I gave it a tab index so that it would show up. If this had been a button, it would have automatically gotten a tab index, but since it's just an icon, it doesn't. So you have to set that, and I set that to 0. Um, and then I added an action for when the keyboard button enter goes up, it launches the material dialog, or if you click on it, it launches the material dialog. And I told it to use the information icon, and I gave it a class of TT. So by default, this thing shows up really tiny and sort of off center. So I had to add some custom styles to increase the size of it. So I increased it from, I think it was defaulting to 12 to 16. It might have been 14. And then I move it down so that it aligns with this text. And then in order this rule attribute um, doesn't apply unless it's relative or absolute or whatever. So I set it to relative, and then I gave it a cursor pointer so that when the user mouses over, it does that. Now I will say that in most places, every place I've ever worked, when you mouse, they generally want to launch these dialogues when you mouse over, and then they want to like remove them when you mouse off. When you mouse off, they want like that's how they want their hints to work. That's always a mistake. They always regret it. It never ever works out well. And the reason is because there is no like if you're using like a mobile device and you try to put your finger, there's no hover in that situation. Or if you're like a keyboard user, like a lot of people just like the keyboard and they just want to tab through, and if they want to read this, they want to be able to launch it. by hand, and then hit the escape button. Um, I think you'll if you use a hover, you're gonna and you're like in a big government or massive corporation sort of situation, you're gonna end up getting hit for 508 compliance because screen readers just can't do this. This doesn't get you all the way there with screen readers because with the screen reader you need to be able to tab through these things so it can read those. So this isn't like a full 508 compliance sort of implementation, but it does most of the hard parts. Um, but anyways, and then you see that it sort of highlights it so that a keyboard user can see where they are. So that's that. That's a lot of rambling. Um, so in the TypeScript for the mesh manager, I import the materials component that we just created so that we can launch it. And then I also imported the mat dialog so that we can actually have access to the materials dialog. And then I pull in I import them again. The fact that these two names are the same is probably confusing. But I pull in the materials component, and this mat dialog is not a module, and I guess you can tell because it doesn't end with the word module. It's a service, so you don't import them. What you do is you inject them, and then you give yourself access. So basically, this creates a implementation of the dialog service, or it gives you a dialog service. This one would give you a dialog service because I believe the dialog service is probably for root, but maybe not. It might give you a new implementation. You can't really tell based on this. I don't think. And then down here, basically we launch it. We set the width of it to 250 pixels. We tell it this dialog open, and we give it the component that we want it to render, and we give it a width. I do not know what happens if you don't give it a width. Let's do that because I'm pretty sure that is optional, and I only took it because it was in the example, and this was supposed to be a bare bones example. So yeah, so you don't need a width, and it actually does a pretty good job of setting it up without a width. So I'm going to remove that because I just like don't want to imply that is required. So in the materials component, it's just regular HTML, just some tables and bolding and stuff like that. And then and there's no styling. And then this is the unit test that I am not doing anything with. And then the component doesn't actually do much other than it doesn't have any code in it. So I love how English people say in it all the time. But anyways, I digress. So this is how you do it. This is how you create a normal material. I mean, this is how you create a little dialogue. This is how you create an info section. This is how you set it up so that it's tabbable. It is funny to me and interesting to me that material design doesn't by default make hint texts tabbable, because you would think with screen readers that they would want the screen reader would want to be able to read the hint text, but maybe probably the intention is that you're supposed to tell the user, you're supposed to give the person this hint text information when they tab into the field. So like you would tab in, and then the little screen reader would read the material. This is the material that will. They probably give you the name of the field and say the material that will be rendered for the mesh. But I don't think that happens automatically. I think you'd have to code that. And 508 compliance is its own thing. But anyways, this video, I guess that's about it. Happy coding, guys. Bye.